Okay, we are back with another episode of the Business and Balance podcast. Today, I am unbelievably excited to have a friend, Mr. Will Duffin, on the show. Friend of a friend, I should say, through my business partner, Andy. And funnily enough, we were just talking about how we're going to intro this. And the first time I ever laid eyes on this specimen of a man was he was waltzing down the aisle with an acoustic guitar around his neck, singing a Whitesnake song at Andy's wedding. And I think the rest is history. So welcome, Will.
Thanks, Sam. That was such a great moment. Yeah,
man.
Singing a bit of Whitesnake in Upline Parish Church.
I didn't forget it.
It was a great moment. Yeah.
Well, dude, I'll tell you what, before we roll into anything, we've got so many questions lined up for today. It will be nice for the audience at home. Just give them a little rundown, who you are, what you do, and maybe even what brings you here today.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Well, thanks for having me. I'm loving this show, by the way. We've had so many great guests. You've had a pediatrician, you've had a fitness guru, an accountant. Now you've got an NHS GP. That's my main occupation, if you like. But I have a number of different roles and side hustles. I'm a kind of portfolio type career. And I'm also someone with ADHD who just is always interested. I'm ideas focused, and I see this shiny thing in the corner of my eye and I'm just off doing it. And so the whole game is trying to rein that in and focus and move things forwards for me. And that's kind of why we're here talking right now. So, yeah, NHS GP. I've got my other side interest is something called extreme medicine.
Okay.
Which, if you like, is medicine at the edge. It's where expedition, wilderness, humanitarian, jungle, mountain, ocean medicine all meets. And I'm this medical director of this company. We do training courses around the world for that, and we do lots of TV and film medical cover. And then as part of that, this is my most fun gig is being the on-screen doctor for an American reality TV show. So I do that. I'm out there for 5 weeks of the year doing that. I do lots of lecturing and teaching generally. My side project at the moment is I've been trying to get into TV, and I've been pitching loads of TV show formats to different producers. Not with much success yet. I'm working on it, but that's been a fun project. And of course, the big thing is I'm a dad. 2 young, very needy, extremely wild children. I'm a very high energy person. You totally get the kids you deserve. And I've got 2 and a 5-year-old, and honestly, they keep us on our toes. So keeping all of that kind of rolling is what this game of life is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I think a really cool place for us to start is we are both dads. We're both obviously pretty busy, and I think one of the hardest things is managing your time, and where do you put the most energy? How do you divide up the limited energy and hours you have in a day? It's something that I've realized recently is not a solvable problem. It's just an ongoing learning. Have you got any hacks as someone who's worked in what is a pretty high demanding profession and then now having 2 kids as well?
It's really interesting you mentioned the word energy, and for me that is such an important thing, not just because I'm 40 and actually I have to steward my energy more carefully now, but I think if you're doing kind of knowledge work or high value work that's difficult, it requires a lot of thought, you're trying to create new and original things, energy is really your currency. That's what generates ideas. Yeah. That's what kind of drives things forwards, isn't it? So for me, I've got all these different ways that I kind of try and steward that energy. And I'm most productive when I'm in that kind of flow state, when I just sit down and I'm just kind of firing off these ideas. And then some days it flows and some days it doesn't. But I think one of the biggest things for me is just managing my energy levels in terms of making sure I'm well rested. I've got lots of sleep. I don't take on too much. I have like more hobbies than I could possibly have time for. And I find like the music, I love surfing, I love going outdoors and hiking and running. I'm really into CrossFit. I do all these little things. I try and keep those going. I find that they put back in what the day takes out. And so that hopefully I stay positive and have that energy that I can then bring into not just my work life, but also my family life as well. And I can leave that positive footprint in the and bring value in the things that I do.
Yeah, you mentioned sleep there, and actually, we were talking on the drive over about me jumping on board with Steve, my coach, and before that, I had no idea that sleep was even any good. It was something that I think, being a young person starting up businesses, wanting to be an entrepreneur, I just worked all hours, day and night, and I just completely missed the value in sleep. And it sounds ridiculous at the age of like 32 or however old I am now, that I only just unlocked that getting 8 hours sleep is like a superpower. Yeah. But like, how much sleep are you aiming for out of interest? I know it's tricky with kids, but do you have a good structure?
Yeah, well, I think everyone's different, but I think I need about 8 to 9 hours. And I'm very militant. My wife and I really ring fence sleep. And when the kids were young, that wasn't so easy to do. As you know, you go through this period where everything's upended and you just constantly you're like a zombie half the time. Luckily, they're kind of sleeping now, so it's down to me to manage that. But I have really try and. It requires quite a lot of self-discipline, I think. And I think getting to bed not too late is the biggest challenge for me. I'm a night owl. Most of my brain just kind of comes to 10 o'clock and it just lights up like a Christmas tree, and I'm just suddenly thinking of all these projects and stuff I'm trying to do. So I have loads of kind of little strategies that I try and use to switch all that kind of switch it down into kind of a different state. Yeah. And one of those is just, I have a ban on using my phone after about 9:30, 10 o'clock. It just goes to bed, and then I don't access it again till after I've sorted the kids out in the morning. So that's cool. Distraction is out the way. I read. I don't do anything too stimulating. I don't watch too much TV. I just read Kindle for like half an hour and then go to sleep. But I always try and go to bed at exactly the same, like a metronome, like 10:30, boom, lights out. Don't always achieve it, but I think it really helps, because every time I do end up working late, and I know it's so tempting, isn't it? Especially if you're like me and you're kind of naturally want to do that. I'm always borrowing for the next day, and I feel that I'm not as productive the next day. It's never really pays off because you get less done the following day.
Absolutely, yeah. There's actually a really good, I'm pretty sure it's Richard Branson. I'm sure it's in a Richard Branson book, when he talks about drinking and how getting drunk, drinking alcohol is like borrowing happiness from the next day. Yeah. And it's like, it's the same kind of thing with sleep, I found as well. You got to if you get the hours right, I found it matters actually for me, even less about the hours and more about the timing. So like, I try to sleep from 10 till 6. And even if I go to bed an hour later, but I still make sure I get up at 6, it's not as bad as if I actually let myself sleep longer. Like, I think the wake time is almost like, that's it. My body's just so used to that now. I can't break that cycle. Okay, so off the back of sleep, we were discussing briefly over email a viewpoint that I hadn't come across before, that you mentioned about work-life integration. So for me, it's always been kind of work-life balance, and I suppose finding whatever that means. What is work-life integration? What does it mean to you, and how's it all come about?
Well, the term work-life balance is that traditional term that we've heard time and again, but I don't buy into it. I don't like that term, because balance for me is this precarious and effortful thing. It's like you're trying to tread this fine line, and on the one side you've got the work, one side you've got life, and if there's more of one, then there's less of the other, and I just don't like that way of living. There's this kind of tension between the two. The whole idea of work-life integration is that there is less of this clear cutoff between your work and your life. It's the idea that everything is really life. Every minute of the day, you're spending your precious life energy. And it's kind of recognizing that the way we work now, those two things, they kind of meld into one another, and they're much more integrated than ever before. So, for example, we're working a lot more from home. For example, now I'm doing webinars from home, and my life is built into my work, in the sense that I break from the webinar, and I'll go down and play with the kids for 20 minutes, and that's kind of a bit of life, and then I'm back to work, back in the kind of work zone. So that's and when for example, work life this evening, coming to this podcast, I really wanted to do this because it's really interesting discussion that we're having. But I thought, how can I inject a bit more life into that? And near to the train station, when you pick me up, there's a skate park. So I just brought my skateboard and thought, hey, I'll just have a quick skate around and just, so I'm building that in. And in my GP work, I only work at practices that are within cycling distance, or near a gym, so that I can get the joy of cycling there and maybe getting some exercise around that. And so it's the kind of the life and the work, they happen together in tandem with one another. It's more like a dance, if you like, than a balancing act.
Yeah, no, that makes sense actually, because I think when I first read it, when you mentioned it, I was thinking like, is it about the time construct of it, like pulling hours of work into the weekend or something like that, where people would expect it to be free time? But no, you're saying it's more about actually your life is full of everything, including work. Try and pull all the good stuff into, the other bits that you have to do as well.
Totally. And if you have chosen a vocation like medicine or even business, a business that you're passionate about, it's not really work anymore either, is it? Because you're doing the thing that you love. It doesn't feel like you're working. And I think that if you look at how we diarize things in the calendars we use, everything's integrated now, isn't it? Your personal and your kind of business commitments are all on the same sheet. So I think that's how we need to conceptualize things. We need to think about less about how we can ring fence time for those different things, but how they can serve one another and how we can blend them in a way that they harmonize.
Yeah, I suppose I've accidentally kind of been doing that for a while, in the sense that like I tend to work from about 6 a.m. until about 10:30 in the morning. And it's created a life where then my days are pretty free. Now I can pour myself into my business more if we're doing, a lot of high level stuff at the minute. Maybe we're growing the ads or whatever, or I can just do something with the kids or go here and go there. And it's less about, Monday to Friday and then having the weekends off, and more, well, I just got to crush this work every morning. It doesn't matter what the day is. It's more a case of like, I'm buying back the time where, the kids want to do stuff in the day,
Yeah, and you're much more agile with that, aren't you? You can be more responsive to the needs of the business or your family, depending if there's a family crisis. So you can say, hey, look, right now, that's what my family need me, and I'm going to prioritize that. Likewise, if there's something going down with the business, you can do that. You're a lot more able, I think, to be responsive to what's going on around you, and less kind of rigid, saying, right, clock struck 5, I'm off work, it's leisure time.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is something that I'm really passionate about actually. And like when I've been posting a few bits about different types of freedom, whether it be financial, time, or location, it's so funny that everybody's answer off the bat is it's always about money. It's always about financial freedom. And then you start to think about it a little bit deeper, and it was like, I talked to a friend of mine, Richard, who's a train driver. He loves what he does. It's all he's wanted to do ever since he was young, was be a train driver. He trained up, he's got his dream job. What he would love is just to maybe do it for 3 days a week instead, so he can just buy back a little bit more time. And I think it couldn't be a better advert for becoming a business owner, a freelancer, taking control of your time. There's no better advert for it really than the idea of work and life integrating together.
Yeah, but this is I think the catch-22 here. That control and that freedom is a wonderful thing if you know how to use it. And certainly for me, it's too much freedom, I find actually quite overwhelming. And that's why I've kind of been on the journey, a little bit like yours, Sam, to try and build some structures in and some habits and systems that enable me to steward my energy and my ideas in a constructive way. So that's the journey that I've been on.
Yeah, it's quite serendipitous that you mentioned that, because my weekly videos I've been doing, the topic for it this week is about me rebuilding my routine. And I came across a video from Dan Coe talking about how routine creates freedom. And I'd never looked at it like that before, but actually, I think inherently as a human being, freedom isn't really built into us. We quite like structure and repetitiveness. And you think about even children, if they don't have the same bedtime, the same wake time, the same meal times, like you lose it. Like things just, toys go out the pram, and we kind of need that structure. And I realized that because I tried to have a couple of weeks where I didn't have a morning routine. and it was horrible. I felt so unaccomplished, and like I was chasing my tail. Things were taking longer than they ever should have. And I wasn't fencing in the times and the structures that I needed to get things done. And yeah, it's so funny that you do need to create boundaries to cause freedom.
And that routine is kind of imposed upon you in the traditional paradigm of work. If you're working in an office environment and it is 9 to 5, that's done for you. You don't have to think about it. But if you're a business owner, a solopreneur, a freelancer, it's down to you. You've got to sort your own routine out and make it work for you. And I think that's a piece of work that a lot of people overlook. They kind of just get on with the work. But I think building in kind of routines and structures in the day that serve you is such a powerful tool to enable you to do your best work.
Yeah. So when it comes to structures, routines, you may have had some things in place before, which I'm sure all went very haywire when children came along.
Oh, yes.
So 2 kids now, 2 and 5. How did that change your perception of, maybe the value on the work you were doing, the hours you were doing, the way you structured things, the way you balanced your energy? Like, what changed when they came along and started wanting all your attention?
Oh, such a great question, Sam. I mean, yeah, and I just want to preface this by saying my children are wild, honestly, like full feral. The struggle is real, honestly, every single day. It's, trying to get them out the door, and there's just stuff going on. They're trying to find their shoes. One of them's run upstairs. The other one's still butt naked. And then I turn around and the elderly cat's just curling out a turd on the sofa.
Perfect.
And, you're already 10 minutes, the school gates are closing and it's just like, so honestly, it's, when kids come into your life, it upends everything. Do you know what the biggest thing for me was? Initially it was a sense of frustration and almost some slight resentment, if I'm honest, because I'm very like you. I see some of you in me, Sam. I'm very performance minded. I'm always looking to optimize. I'm an obsessive person. I get into stuff and I'm like, how can I improve this? How can I tweak this and make it better and get better things out of it? And the problem is the kids don't really get that. They're not really into that kind of thing. They
optimize.
You want to optimize. You're leaving the house routine.
Yeah.
They're not going to buy into that. So to begin with, you think, well, I'm getting like 50% less done than before kids came along, and that was a bit of a blow. And we're always striving, aren't we? I'm always trying to kind of get to that next thing. A future focused version of me pre-kids struggled to kind of reconcile this idea that once I was kind of really moving the needle on the projects, my professional aspirations in my life, and suddenly everything was stalling, and I just wasn't getting anywhere with it because I had these little creatures that were just always causing chaos,
Yeah.
And for a couple of years, I think I wrestled with that a little bit, and I've had a bit of a transformation, and I think parenting is transformational for everyone.
Yeah.
You've got to embrace where you are. You've got to embrace the amazing things that being a parent give to you as well. And I just feel like the fact that my whole identity and sense of worth is not just anchored around the work that I do. It's now I really identify with being a dad, and that being as important a role, if not more important than anything else I do in life. That is such a source of strength. It gives me so much energy. It gives me so much positivity. It gives me so much warmth and love that I can then channel into my work. And I've only really come to realize that in the last year or two, and I'm really leaning into it now. And I feel that no longer are my children this massive ball and chain around my neck that are holding me back somehow from reaching my full potential in a professional sense. Actually, they're a huge asset, and I'm really excited about sharing some of the energy and passion I have with them as they grow, and us creating things together one day, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I know for me, like kids coming along, it supercharged growth for me, whether it be we were in a little house in Taunton, and Megan was pregnant during lockdown, and we were so hungry to be somewhere quieter. We were in quite a loud part of town. It wasn't the nicest kind of thing. It was a bit like we really wanted to get out if we were going to have a child, and that just set me into like overdrive for like, okay, I got to do this now. Like, got to grow the business, got to do this, need to make some money. We got to move out here. And then the same thing when they came along. Same as you, it's very tricky, I think, for the first couple of years to try and find a bit of a happy medium between feeling like you're able to pursue what you want, but also to be present and a good dad and a husband. Then seems to come third in the line. I think again, once you get over that hurdle, though, it is an asset, like you said, and it's quite nice. I always think whenever I'm doing anything with work and business and finance and whatever now, I almost find that a bit easier because I just think being a dad is so hard that it sort of makes everything else seem quite blasé.
Yeah, I think the dadding days, and I do about a day and a half a week, are the hardest and most taxing for me. It's not what like you. My brain is wired to kind of work on these kind of projects, and I've found them quite difficult to begin with, and now I've got a playlist of activities of things that we do together, and the 5-year-old's in school now, so he's kind of out the picture most of the week. But the 2-year-old, we have loads of little cool stuff we do together.
That's cool.
It's brilliant. I'm really embracing it, and I'm running this little dad's group on a Friday morning, which I've really enjoyed. And that's given
it's definitely tough. Megan went to Greece for 5 days with her friends on like a bit of an all-inclusive holiday. My God, honestly, she left on the Friday. The weekend was that weekend was probably one of the hardest weekends of my life. Bearing in mind, I was still having to work as well, so I was getting up extra early, doing the work hopefully before they got up. But the weekends were so tough. Once Isabella was in preschool on the Monday, and I could breathe for a minute and do stuff with Jesse and like try to break the day up a bit, it was a little bit easier.
Just those moments that we realize how much our wives actually do in our lives, because I try and achieve some degree of equity with household stuff and sorting the kids out, but it's when she goes away that I realize, holy cow, she was carrying all of this.
And then you still get to the end of the 5 days and realize there's no washing done.
That's it. I'm literally just
it's like,
because Sam, I'm away for 5 weeks. A couple of weeks time, I'm gone. I'm in South Pacific, and I'm out of the. It's amazing. I'm very grateful to my wife for doing that, but I think if it was the other way around, I don't know if I'd survive.
No, I had my friend Ed Sedgwick on the podcast recently, and he's a tour manager for some of the biggest performing artists in the world, Ed Sheeran, Anne-Marie, people like that. And he's away for 2-3 months on end touring the world, and we get Alex and their little boy over as much as we can, but I just think that must be such a challenge. Okay, so kids are hard, life is hard, work is hard, everything's pretty tough. One thing I've been wrestling with recently, and I think I finally figured it out for me, but I'm interested to know what you define as success or being successful. What does that actually mean to you?
There's so many different versions of success, different ways you could metricate success, whether that is kind of financial, or is it to do with status? Is it to do with the size of your muscles? Is it to do with your good looks? What even is success? But
we've ticked both those boxes.
100%. But I don't know. I think for me, I think success is a much broader thing, and I've sat down and I've done this kind of work where I've tried to look at what success for me would look like, and I've written that down in the form of a personal mission statement. And I found that a really useful exercise where I've just sat down, and I think for me, success isn't so much about, it's not so much about the things that I have and what I've accrued. It's more about who I've become. It's my character and how I show up in the world, and then how I contribute to the world around me. That's my kind of version of success, and it's a very broad thing. And at the very top of that list really is, and it's risen to the top recently because my mission statement, it changes. I review it every month, and it's constantly changing because I think your life's mission is something it's not something you write, it's something you discover as you go through life, and you kind of it reveals itself to you through a series of experiences. And through becoming more of a family man and a husband, and I've realized that actually my success, I want to do things the right way. I want to build success, but also bring my family and the community with me, and not just serve my own interests, my own ambition, but also serve them in a way that has a lasting positive impact.
Yeah, definitely. No, I resonate with exactly what you're saying, because that was 100% me, 6, 7 years ago. If there was a triangle of health, wealth, and happiness, all I cared about was the wealth one for a long period of time. And it meant that I ended up overweight and terrible in relationships. And then over time, I started to realize that if I was going to actually maintain a relationship, I actually need to try it this bit. So I started doing a bit more of that. And then really, it's only within the last year I've started to focus on the health. But I feel like I've got a little bit of all of them on the go now, but it's taken a long time.
Yeah, you need all of those spokes. You can't neglect any of them, I think, because that you're also building a foundation, I think. That supports a rocket launch. If you neglect your relationships and you just focus on the work that you're doing, I think eventually it's going to come up. It's going to catch up with you, and you'll burn out, or you'll just be very unhappy, very lonely. And I that's not the future that I want. I think it takes longer. This is what I've learned. It takes longer to do it the right way. I think you have to step aside. It might be a day of the week where you really wanted to work on a project where you think, actually, no, I need to go and take my wife out for lunch because we've hardly seen each other. We've just been ships in the night, so we're going to go out and do that. And you prioritize that, and you push other stuff aside. So yeah, it's going to take longer, but in the long run, I think what you'll build is more, is a foundation for that rocket launch.
Yeah. Okay. So to get there, wherever that is, are you setting goals? Do you have any wisdom on goal setting? Have you tried it, different routines in it in the past, or got any thoughts on it?
Like you, Sam, I'm always trying stuff, battle testing stuff, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it's this iterative process, isn't it? We're just figuring it out as we go along. And I think there is some value in goals. I think they focus your mind, they give you direction, but I think they can be overused. And they've certainly been problematic for me at times, because for me, the problem with goals primarily is that it makes you very future focused. It anchors your mind onto this future event. You're like, well, I'll be happy when I get to that thing, when I've got that thing, or I reach that point. And you're always thinking of that future thing. And when you even get there, there's perhaps like this kind of moment of kind of celebration, and then you move on to the next goal and you think about the next thing.
Yeah.
Often we're too ambitious with our goals. The goals are imposed on us from other people, I think, and often the goals they assume a very linear path, that in the process of getting there, things are going to remain the same, and things are very dynamic. And actually, especially when you're working in business or a freelancer or an entrepreneur, things move in strange directions and places you hadn't foreseen. And I don't think goals really are able to adjust that well. And I think for me, the biggest shift, and this great book recommendation for you here, Atomic Habits by James Clear, and this is a big thing that comes up in that book. It's this idea of rather than focusing on the goal, the end point, it's good to have a sense of where you want to go, what that, in a broader sense, what that looks like. And that for me is my mission statement.
Yeah.
But what really matters is you win or lose on the unit of the day, how each day is run. And what you really need is systems and habits and processes that ensure that you're doing the right things each and every day, and with that consistency, that if you focus on that process and get that right, then those whatever goals were, they will follow. That will be a natural outcome. I'm also much more focused on the moment, and I can live more in the moment, because I realize that my kind of locus of happiness is in the now, and it's what I'm doing right now. We cannot live our goals. We cannot live in the future. We can only live in what's happening right now, and that's the space I think we need to inhabit.
Yeah, I do agree. If you're winning the day and you're a bit more present, then you're not hinged on being happy when.
Yeah.
So when it comes to winning the day, then, how are you winning the day? And do you have any insight around more proactively getting things done, working through tasks, structuring things, frameworks? What do your processes look like?
So the biggest transformation for me in this domain has been, actually, it's called Getting Things Done. It's a kind of productivity tool. It's a guy called David Allen. He's a big deal in the US. I read his book, and I've just basically swallowed that whole. I've read lots of books, and many of them I've cast aside, but this one particularly, it solved the problem for me. But having a kind of ADHD brain, one of my problems was that my head was just this sea of to-do lists. I had all these open loops, they're undone tasks just swimming around my head. And the crazy thing is, your brain always reminds you of those things when you're not actually able to action them. So when you're at the cinema with your wife or whatever, you're having lunch with your in-laws, and suddenly this thing pops into your head like, oh, I didn't do this thing, I didn't post that letter, I didn't reply to Jane's email, whatever it was. It's constantly intruding on your consciousness, and it prevents you from being present with people and being in the moment, and just
it feels like you're describing me.
Right, yeah. So my head, I think it's the whole premise of this book is your head is for having ideas, not for holding ideas. And what I realized is I needed a system that could steward all of those little open loops, all those undone things, into a trusted system, so that it could be out of my head, and it would release all of that space to then be more creative and more present. And that's this kind of GTD method that I've played around. It took me about 2 years to implement it. In its essence, it's a fancy to-do list. And what you do, every time you come up with something, a task that needs doing, I just capture it into my system. And I use a kind of a productivity tool, a software called Things 3. I capture that to do and it goes into my inbox. And the beauty is I forget about it. It's gone. It's gone into my trusted system. And then later on in the day, I'll go through all of my inbox of all the to-dos that I've captured at different moments. And I'll clarify what needs doing, how urgent is it, when am I going to do it? And then I'll organize that into different projects. And most importantly, I organize it onto a day that I'm going to do it. That having that unit of time in there is so important. So I will say, okay, that thing I'm going to do, I've got a block of time on Wednesday. I'm going to do that on Wednesday. I'll do that thing next Thursday, and I'll batch them together. So similar things are together. And I know because my system is working, I trust myself that I will do those things, and therefore I can let go of them right now. And the beauty is you're thinking you're always investing in your future self. So when it comes to that work day, I don't have to think about what I'm going to do that day. I've already allocated tasks for that day. My past self was considerate enough for my future self that it's all there for me. And I just have to run the program. I just have to do those things. But crucially now, particularly the big win for me is when I'm with the kids, when we're at the park, when we're going out to the woods, when we're just playing a stupid game. I don't have those intrusive thoughts about what is undone. All the things I'm not doing are no longer clouding my consciousness, because I've developed this system where I know that it's going to be done in the future. It's in my GTD system, and that has been massively transformational for me.
Amazing. Okay, so a final little question just to wrap things up. You mentioned when we were talking over email about, in your mission statement, one of the key things that cropped up a couple of times was about this feeling of being grateful for what you have in the moment. This kind of goes well with what we were just saying about not living too much in the future and focusing on the present. Do you find that comes quite naturally to you, or is there something you're doing on a daily basis to try and cultivate that mindset? Do you journal? Do you meditate? Do you do anything to try and think, well, how am I going to be present? How am I not going to focus on the material things in life? How do I make sure that I'm feeling that way?
Yeah. I think it's an act, a deliberate daily thing that I have to. I just to talk about the material piece. I am naturally quite materialistic. I love buying new stuff. I love technology. I love gadgets. I can't change that about myself. I've read stuff. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. I've read his books, and he seems to be perfectly happy just contemplating like a flower in a field. Love that guy, and I wish I could be like that. But I'm naturally. Give me a new MacBook and I'll be really kind of buzzing off that, Yeah. So I think we're all to some extent quite materialistic in that, we're surrounded by nice things every day. And I think we really do have to, for me, a deliberate thing has been to to cling on less to those material things and really invest in just being happy in yourself, just with what you have. And gratitude is a big thing that comes out with this. And I do journal. I do kind of gratitude journaling. I have a little app. I have a little Bluetooth keyboard, and each day that I manage it, probably every other day, I spend 5 minutes just writing and a note to myself about the things that happened that day, what I'm grateful for that day. I have a little gratitude jar that sits in my bathroom. It's a really easy thing. It's just it's a jar of pennies, and I take 3 pennies before I go to bed, and the last thing I do before I go to sleep is I put a penny in the jar for each thing that I'm happy that happened that day, and that's the thing I hold on to before I go to sleep. That actually helps me sleep because it's about positive psychology. It puts me in that positive mindset, puts me in that kind of space where I'm grateful and happy for what happened that day. That's the last thing I do at night, and rather than being anxious about what's going to go on the next day or what isn't done, I've really deliberately focused on the good things. What actually was really nice about that day. And then the other thing I do is, I think meditation's been great. I use an app called Headspace. I only have time for 5 minutes. It's like time confetti, isn't it, with children? Whenever I don't get up like 4 a.m. and meditate for like 2 hours. But whenever I get a window, like a little piece of confetti falls my way.
30 seconds while buttering a piece of toast.
Exactly. I'll check out. I'll just say, well, can I just take 5 minutes, and I'll just go out the back, and I'll just put my headphones in and just do 5 minute like guided meditation, and that's brilliant. And then the other thing with mindfulness, I think that's a deliberate daily practice as well that is very good. And I think that is just, again, finding moments of the day when you, say for example, you're at a restaurant with your wife, instead of when she gets up to go to the toilet, instead of checking your phone, I just sit there and I just look at stuff. When I'm at traffic lights in my car, and it's a red light, instead of like thinking, come on, change, I'm like, wait, this is the moment just chill, man. Just wait a moment. And it's a deliberate thing that you're looking for these little moments where you can just be, okay, I'm sitting here. What can I see? Yeah. What can I hear? And you just open your eyes and look and just be, exist. And that's a really, that's something you have to kind of force yourself to do, because there's a million other things that your brain could be working on. But trying to bring everything back to the present moment and kind of practice these skills of meditation, mindfulness, gratitude, I think those are really valuable tools that keep you grounded. They keep you kind of present. They give you this equanimity. I think they give you this kind of this level, steady place that you can anchor yourself to whenever you need it.
Well, listen, man, we got to wrap things up, but I really do appreciate it. I feel like we should run this back sometime. We could have spoke for like 3 hours.
Well, hey, man, it's an ongoing thing. I'm sure in the next few weeks, we'll both have our minds blown by other stuff that we discover, and we can do this again. And who knows, next time we talk, I might have completely changed tack and I'll be doing something completely different. So
yeah, well, certainly, it could be completely.
It's a journey, not a destination, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. If you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah, I like that. I'm down with that.
Amazing, man. Well, listen, thank you so much, Will. I really do appreciate it. And for all of you watching, listening, I hope you've enjoyed that. Can't wait to catch you in the next one on Business and Balance. I'll see you then.